Hello. Just a quick heads up, you'll hear my dogs announce themselves a little bit during the audio, but it's not really loud, but it is noticeable. So I wanted to give you a heads up. Anyways, I hope you enjoy this episode. Welcome to the Curious Wanderer Bible Study. Today we'll be looking at Genesis 14, which is really, it's an exciting chapter. And rather than doing several chapters today, we just want to do one and focus in on really cool stuff happening here. Um, the big takeaway from this for us, I think, is about preparation and being prepared for when God calls us or for when difficult things happen, because they will. Um, so, just to set the context here, recall we're talking about Abram, and Lot. So, in the past few chapters, we've been setting the stage for the story of Abram, and his nephew Lot plays a major role in it. In the previous chapter, Abram and Lot had split up. Um, Abram stayed in Canaan, and Lot went towards the area of Sodom and Gomorrah, near Sodom in particular. So that's where we left him. And Abram had just made an altar to the Lord to give thanks for the blessings he had had and to commemorate the changes that had happened. So now in chapter 14, we have a really dramatic event happen. So the quick overview of it is there's a major battle that happens. On one side, you have Sodom, Gomorrah, and a couple of other cities. On the other side, you have five other kings that are going to come in and take over. And there's a major battle that happens. In that major battle, we see that Sodom loses. Sodom, Gomorrah, and their allies lose. And since Lot is in the area, he gets taken away along with all of his possessions, his family, as plunder from that battle. And we're left with Lot being lost. And we pick up the story with Abram realizing this, and he basically creates a rescue party of 300-ish men, and they go and defeat these people who had defeated Sodom and Gomorrah and the allies, and recaptures Lot and his family. And we end with Abram reaching some of the kings that he had rescued people from, and giving thanks in particular to this very interesting fellow named Melchizedek, which we will see more about as we go through this. So, dramatic war. Lot comes back. Or sorry, Lot's taken. Abram comes, rescues Lot, and then thanks are given to God, and some interesting allies are made. So, all this is in chapter 14. But the big takeaway I have from this is that you should always be prepared. Life is going to throw chaotic events at you, and you need to be prepared so that you can help weather them, not only for yourself, but those around you. Um, so let's give a little reading here from what's going on. Starting in verse 8. Then the king of Sodom, the king of Gomorrah, the king of Admah, and the king of Zeboim, and the king of Bela marched out and drew up their battle lines in the valley of Siddim against Kedalarar, king of Elam, Tidal, king of Goyim, Amraphel, king of Shinar, and Arioch, king of Elasar, 4 kings against 5. Now the valley of Siddim was full of tar pits, and when the kings of Sodom and Gomorrah fled, they're defeated, some of the men fell into them, and the rest fled to the hills. The 4 kings seized all the goods of Sodom and Gomorrah and all their food, then went away. They also carried off Abram's nephew Lot and his possessions, since he was living in Sodom. Okay, so major battle. Lot is stuck in the middle of it. This is a metaphor for so many things that happen in our lives. Sometimes the tragic events or the difficult events we find ourselves in are our own fault. But as often it feels, they are not our fault at all. We're just stuck in the middle of something tragic, chaotic, and difficult, much as Lot was here. Lot had no choice in this. There was massive war, and he was caught in the crossfire. So let's pick up in verse 13. after Lot has been taken captive, a man who had escaped came and reported this to Abram the Hebrew. Now Abram was living near the great trees of Mamre the Amorite, a brother of Eshcol and Anar, all of whom were allied with Abram. So we see that he's living near a bunch of allies who are willing to help. Very important. When Abram heard that his relative had been taken captive, he called out the 318 trained men born in his household and went in pursuit as far as Dan. During the night, Abram divided his men to attack them, and he routed them, pursuing them as far as Hobah, north of Damascus. He recovered all the goods and brought back his relative Lot and his possessions, together with the women and the other people. So we hear how the rescue attempt went through, how it happened here. But a huge thing that's not mentioned, but is really, really relevant, is Lot had made, sorry, Abram had made a lot of allies in the area, and he could count on these people. He had 318 trained men born in his household. Um, we also hear about the allies whom he had with him. He had a lot of trained men, he had allies ready for this occasion. He was prepared. He could take time, right? This is not going to be trivial to track this down. He had enough food and supplies that his family and the people around him could survive while he went off and did this dangerous venture trying to rescue his nephew, Lot. What happens next? So he tracks them down. So we hear during the night, in verse 15, during the night, Abram divided his men to attack them, and he routed them, pursuing them as far as Hobah, north of Damascus. So he tracks them down, pursued them as far as Dan, we hear in verse 14. Then what? He waits quietly for a time when he can make his move. So not only be prepared, but be strategic in our response. So you need to be prepared ahead of time when chaos is going to hit, because you don't know when. You just know it will at some point. You're guaranteed. And then be strategic. He didn't just go off in a mad fit and start attacking. He waited until the right moment and attacked. So, and then we hear about what happens afterwards. So it's really interesting. Two really cool things happen after the victory. So picking up in verse 17, let's pick up in verse 16. He recovered all the goods and brought back his relative Lot and his possessions, together with the women and the other people. Picking up in 17 now, after Abram returned from defeating Kedorlaomer, sorry, hard to pronounce, and the kings allied with him, the king of Sodom came out to meet him. So remember, Sodom, it's a bad place. It comes up a little bit later in the Bible here. So the king of Sodom comes out to meet him, and then Melchizedek, king of Salem, brought out bread and wine. He was priest of God Most High, verse 18 here. And he blessed Abram, saying, Blessed be Abram by God Most High, creator of heaven and earth, and praise be to God Most High, who delivered your enemies into your hand. Then Abram gave him a tenth of everything. So Melchizedek, very interesting character in the Bible here that we only see briefly. Clearly, he's a mixture of both king and man of God. In the New Testament, they use him as sort of a predecessor of Jesus coming. But Abram immediately recognizes the godliness of this man and gives him a tenth, the tithe essentially, of what he has taken in plunder from this battle, in recognition of what God had done for him in delivering this battle to him, to Abram. But, verse 22, let's pick up in verse 21. So right after Abram gave a tenth of everything, the king of Sodom said to Abram, Give me the people and keep the goods for yourself. But Abram said to the king of Sodom, With hand raised I have sworn an oath to the Lord, God Most High, creator of heaven and earth, that I will accept nothing belonging to you, not even a thread or a strap of a sandal, so that you will never be able to say, I made Abram rich. I will accept nothing but what my men have eaten, and the share that belongs to the men who went with me, to Aner, Eshcol, and Mamre. Remember his allies from earlier on. Let them have their share. So we see in this that Abram is willing to give God his due in giving to Melchizedek. But whenever King of Sodom is asking for something out of this, he says, no, 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 and I won't take anything back from you either. I happen to be fighting. Abram happened to be fighting on the same side as Sodom at that moment, but he was in no way allied with them. And he did not want it to be mistaken that he was allied with um, Sodom or Gomorrah in this whole process. So, with that said, we see this really wonderful pattern for how we should be ready and be prepared for chaos that comes. We're guaranteed chaos is going to come in this fallen world. We're guaranteed that we're going to be needed and that we're going to need people will need us to be the light in dark times. In order to be successfully be the light in dark times, we need to be prepared. We need to have friends around us who help support us, like Abram had his allies. We need to have our finances in order so that whenever we need to take time off to help somebody, it's no big deal. We need to have our family in order so that whenever they're needed for something, it's no big deal to do it. And then once it's all done, we need to give God his due for helping us through this, for giving us the wisdom, the insight, and the support to make this challenging time less challenging, and for us to help others. And last but not least, as Abram showed, don't make allies with people who are bad for you. You may temporarily be on their side as you're going through a traumatic time, but recognize the fact that just because you happen to be on the same side as somebody briefly doesn't mean that you're always on their side, that you're always going down the same path. Choose your allies well in these times, and you can weather the storm, and not only weather the storm, but help others. Without Abram being prepared, Lot would have just been gone, and that would have been the end of Lot's story. And because Abram was prepared, Lot was saved. And we can do the same thing in our own lives. Thank you for your time. Have a good day. See you next time.